Hi there, this is Darla, and welcome to today's episode of Activating Magic. This is my first ever solo episode, so if you are watching this on YouTube, I'm not sure if I should look at the camera or look at my paper or look off into the ether. So I don't know how this is going to go, but I'm giving myself permission to be okay with that as we dive into this conversation about a breakthrough in structure and flow. A breakthrough in structure and flow. This is something that I've been experiencing this year. I know I'm still in it, but like a lot has happened, and I feel like it's really valuable to share what I'm learning. So let me start with, I have known for some time that a part of my purpose here is around creating new possibilities for how we experience masculine and feminine energy. I've gotten readings that have mentioned this. I know that I'm very balanced. I am a female engineer. I went to school for chemical engineering. I was one of few women in my class. I went to school with men. I worked with men in the corporate world. I worked initially at Procter & Gamble doing product development, and I ended up in packaging development, which is even more disproportionately men. And so, I was really aware of this, but I wasn't really very present to that it mattered. I was kind of the mindset of whatever, I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. And I know it did matter. I was advised by my management to operate more like men to get ahead with really specific guidance around that. But I just, I never cared. And I really was somewhat ignorant to the impact that being in a female body actually had on my life. I never really identified with the typical gender roles that I saw modeled, right? My mom, cooked and cleaned and took care of the house. I kind of took care of my siblings a lot, but, she was pretty much accepting of the gender roles that were the norm. And, I didn't relate to that. My mom conditioned me really, directly and by her actions to believe that I needed a man to survive. But I never bought into that. And so it was a little confusing, right? Because I knew I was smart. I knew I was capable. I got a good degree. I got a good job, all of that. But I still had it running that I should have a man because, that's what makes you okay in life. And so I struggled in relationships. I dated, men. I married a man. But I wasn't necessarily like looking for the things that other people in my life seemed to be looking for. Gratefully, I had a lot of female engineer friends who were kind of different like me. But a lot of them still, found a good partner and settled down really quickly. And I struggled in relationship. Good relationships I seemed to run away from, and toxic ones I gravitated toward and stayed in too long until something really went wrong. And that was kind of my dynamic in relationship. Meanwhile, I did leave my corporate work and I had a couple of other careers, and then I started my coaching business. And I knew that these principles of energy and how we show up affecting our results were magic. And my business grew. And I used my engineering skills and my intuition to have a successful business. And eventually I got really frustrated because I thought, I have this business I love. I have the money I want. Those things are working for me in life. And yet I can't seem to figure out this relationship thing. And in 2012, I had a mentor who suggested that I had the energy of someone who's gay and doesn't know it. And that's a whole story in itself that I tell on my YouTube channel years ago. But it really hit home. It was like something lifted from me. And maybe it was a whole sense of possibility of, oh, I've been looking in the wrong place, right? But it felt so true and aligned. And so I tried it on and, dated women and eventually married a woman and had a marriage for 7 years. Were we married 6 years we were married. We were together for 9. And I share this because it was a real lesson in masculine and feminine energy, to be honest. And there was so much that was so amazing about that experience. First of all, I felt free to be myself without the pressure of conforming to be, however I'd been conditioned women were supposed to be in life. And that in itself was enlivening. And I got to play with the different energies of masculine and feminine. My ex-wife, we're now divorced, looked more masculine, right? Had more like drove a truck and liked all of the, outdoor sports and intense things that I didn't as much. I looked more feminine, but I brought the structure to our relationship. I was the breadwinner for basically all of our marriage. And that experience was really enlightening and fascinating in terms of what does it mean to embody that sacred masculine energy that I knew I had a lot of. And it was like, let's just stop denying that I have a lot of this and embrace it. And so it was awesome. And then it came to a point where our relationship no longer worked. And I can record probably many episodes about the breakdown of that and the dynamics there. But rather than go into that right now, let's just summarize to say, we were at the end missing a bit of polarity. And as I go on to share, what I'm going to share today about my breakthrough in structure and flow, or my breakthrough in masculine and feminine energy, you can draw your own conclusion about that. But I believe our souls are called, right? And it was a clear calling that my soul had to connect and partner with her and learn from each other and grow in the ways we did together and stagnate in the ways we did together, to invite me into, a new level, really. Interestingly, today I'm partnered with a man and I still identify as queer. And, were I single, I don't know who I would look to date. I can't say, but he's amazing. And it's felt really good at this point to be supported by the masculine. He's quite a bit younger than me, and I'm aware that, the younger generation is so much less concerned about labels, which I'm grateful for. And, one of the reasons I was really drawn to him is he makes me feel safe. And he's a protector kind of energy. I actually see it happening. He's got a rather large staff, and I see his protector energy as he does his work. So I know, I experience it myself, and I think it's a part of how energy flows through him, maybe as a Capricorn. So anyway, we've lived together for the last year, and we've been dating for a couple years now, and it's been so healing for me. It's been so healing, and it's also really catalyzed a big transformation. So just to share, a little bit of context before I go into this transformation, that's really like, I'm still learning it, but it's like life-changing it to my cellular being. So a little bit of context, COVID happened. I moved with my ex. Within a year, I had written a new book, launched my new book, and it did really well. I started doing these events based on the book Shift the Field, called Shift the Field Live, and I did those all through COVID. No longer traveling and having the glamorous destination retreat life that I used to have with my ex. It's like she kind of moved on. We'll just say that. And our marriage started falling apart, and I was doing a lot of deep inner work and healing around that. Meanwhile, I was doing this Zoom event every 9 months and launching a year-long program, and I loved my clients, and we would always fill the program at 16 clients per cohort, and I got to just pour into that program for a while, right? We did weekly sessions, and it really gave me a structure that I was showing up for clients, and it helped me as I moved through my divorce to be in the conversation that I was in showing up for them. So again, worked really well and completed my divorce, became open and available to life in new ways, and realized, wow, I've been teaching every single week. Those of you who have cohorts like this will understand this. I've been teaching every week for 3 years. And prior to COVID, any program I ever did, I always gave myself a down week because I know I need to hermit. I'm a 6'2" in human design. I need my alone time. And so having that weekly pattern was great for all involved moving through the pandemic. But as the world started to open up, it started to feel really heavy. And yet, I consistently get feedback that being together weekly was part of the transformation people were getting, and people wanted that weekly, but I knew I needed to make a change. So I brought in an associate coach who was already a coach on my team and was coaching private clients and things like that. But I brought her in to be the lead coach for our weekly level 1 program. And she apprenticed me for the first time, and then she led, and I still went and held space and all of that. And then the third time she was teaching on her own without me even being there. And so I was really excited about this change because I wanted to free up my time, write my next book and do some other things and basically just not be on Zoom every week. And then we went from, me leading and her apprenticing to her leading. And lots of things are happening in the world. And again, I feel like I'm going to do a separate episode about this. But basically, as we made that transition, our strategy stopped working. So the cohort didn't fill full like it was. We had amazing clients who did sign up, but we were, consistently at 16, and now we were at a fraction of that number in the cohort as I was no longer holding the container in the same way. And I, went inward as I do to kind of think about, well, what was that about? What would I change? Maybe we need her leading more of the actual event that we use to sell the program. Just basically, but, unpacking a lot of different ideas for how to turn that around. So we booked another event, and I would say we really crushed it. Like, we had the best event. And I had my cohort, my partner in crime, lead a lot more, since she was going to be teaching the training, and it went beautifully, but enrollment was still not where it needed to be. It was more than the time before that really got my attention, but it wasn't where it needed to be to actually have a sustainable business. So I was basically out of business in all, for all practical purposes. And because I had, done everything I could think to do between the first, quote, bad event and the second, I was out of creative ideas, right? So here we are, we have these results, and I know something's got to change. Now, at the same time, because, I don't know, I imagine a day where I'm better at receiving signs that are subtle and not waiting for my money to get affected before I make change. But it was okay, there's no option but to make change. And that's kind of where I was. at the beginning of this year. And at the same time, I had moved to Colorado. I'm like super happy. Like the world is beautiful outside my window, and that's all good. And I was experiencing this hip pain. And it was a pain that I had experienced when I was in my past relationship a lot. It was like a significant pain when I would wake up in the morning. And I interviewed Ruth on here, who was the body worker I hired to help me with this hip pain, who does mind body work. And she really helped me to hone in on like that the pain was not, starting in my hips, but that it had to do with this, some sort of trauma around masculine energy. So here I am, and I know, okay, something's got to change in my work because, I didn't want to keep teaching every week and holding everything the way I had been, but bringing someone else in to hold it wasn't working. And so I needed to do something different. And then I'm really deeply committed to healing this hip pain. And my body worker says, oh, it has to do with unhealed masculine trauma, or trauma from the masculine. And so interestingly, right before I went to the bodywork session with Ruth, I had a weird experience in my relationship. So I had moved to Colorado. I was feeling really great, feeling like, oh, I'm safe here. I feel settled. I'm building a home and a future. And my partner, Alex, was having a bad day. And he was mad about something that actually, like, we went on to heal, and it didn't have anything to do with me. And I actually knew in the moment that it didn't have anything to do with me, whatever he was upset about. But he was upset about something in his business and asked me about it, like looking for support. And I didn't immediately support him because I kind of thought he was wrong. But it was like such a minor thing, right? It was like the world's most small issue. But whatever he had going on was totally different. And anyway, it was such a beautiful thing because he said to me, this is right before I'm going to my bodywork session, he looks me in the eye and says, I think you're going to need to move out. I think you're going to need to move out. Now, I hadn't been there that long, here that long. I was feeling settled and oh, I'm so safe and it's wonderful being in this energy and this, with this person who's so supportive and protective. And, I get to be in my divine feminine and life is awesome. And then he says to me, I think you're going to have to move out. And the feeling in my body was like a lightning rod through the center of my body. And so I happened to be going to this bodywork session to get support on my hip pain, right? And she tells me, oh, this has to do with past trauma from the masculine. And immediately I was able to click together that lightning rod feeling that I had in that conversation with Alex to a similar lightning rod feeling that I had growing up. So growing up, my parents divorced when I was young, and we kind of moved around. This is part of how I learned you need a man to survive, because my mom would have different boyfriends and we would move in with them because they were going to save us, right? They were going to take care of us. And then they'd break up, she'd move out, and then we'd do it again. And then when I was first or second grade, she met my stepdad and they got married. And I remember feeling like, okay, this is different. He owned a house and we moved into the house with him. And I had my own room. I had a space. We moved there. I was at the wedding, right? I don't know if I knew what a wedding was, but I know I was smiling ear to ear in all the pictures. And I was so happy because I had this safe space that was going to be, stable and I would maybe be supported and have my needs met. I liked my stepdad. I felt like he was a safe space. Before long, here we are living in our new home and they're newly married. And I don't know what happened, but something happened. And however I was behaving did not work for him. And he looked at me and he said, if you're not careful, I'm going to send you to go live with your dad. Now, my parents divorced when I was 2, and the entire, conditioning I had from my mom was that my dad was scary, terrible, definitely not safe. And so the idea of being sent there was terrifying, right? Like that, like I can still feel that lightning rod of like, okay, I'm going to straighten up. I'm going to get this right. I'm not going to mess up, and I can't relax. And I'm definitely not safe, right? It felt exactly like when Alex said, I think you're going to need to move out. Now, just a little footnote. This was definitely, Alex saying that definitely was in service of me, and we really worked it out. And actually, if I'm honest, I was kind of like secretly planning that I was going to have to move anyway. And so that went away after this experience, which is great. But here I am in the bodywork session, unhealed masculine, and remembering this moment where my stepdad said, you're going to have to move out. If you're not careful, I'm going to send you to go live with your dad. So obviously I decided to be careful and be good was one of the decisions I made. But the other thing that I realized that happened in that moment was I decided I'm not safe here. No one's going to protect me. And I wouldn't have had these words as a kid, but I need to be my own structure. I need to be the masculine. And I did. If I look at photos of myself, I can see that I became more masculine. If I look at over the years, from being like a little girl who's like dancing around to being much more intense and like trying to figure out life and being, I would say in my magic. And then this happens, and now I start to look literally more uptight, more masculine. I start to gain weight and like literally lose my connection to my magic. Now, here's what's so awesome about being in a business of transformation and having a lot of transformational support around me is I got to work with that, right? So if at that time when I was 8 years old, I said, I need to be the structure. No one's going to protect me. I'm not worth protecting. I'm on my own. I've got to figure this out. And I went to work being the structure, right? Which eventually I had siblings come along, and I was very much the structure for them. When both our parents were working nights, I would be the one who would be there. And I took that on. So fast forward to last year, having an event with, lower sales than I had anticipated because I had decided I'm not teaching this every week. And I had delegated the teaching of the first 6 months to an associate coach. And it didn't work. Right? And here's what I kind of started to unpack is that I had been not just providing structure to my clients, I had been being structure for my clients. I wasn't just providing structure to my clients, I was being structure for my clients. And when I looked at my choice of having someone else be the sole leader of this program that I created, I hadn't created it in such a way that the program was the structure. I had created it that the leader was the structure. And this is very nuanced. But what I didn't do, right? I looked at, when hiring, does this person get it in terms of what we teach and the transformation? And I said, yes. I did not look at, could this person be what this program has been providing? Could this person be what the program had been providing? Well, I didn't even know that I, as the leader, was being the structure. It was like the water I swam in since I was 8, right? When I was 8, I decided, okay, I'm in charge. I'm the one. And, I've healed different layers of being in charge or having to be smart or having to be in control or whatever. But I never knew that just my energy, like the way I interacted with life was, I've got this, I'm structure here. And so I didn't hire my replacement to have that kind of similar energy. In fact, my replacement had a lot more feminine and a lot less structure and was really like wanting to be the structure and trying to be the structure, but really like not designed with masculine energy the way that I am. And so, but we didn't know that. We didn't talk about it. We didn't acknowledge it. And I certainly didn't hire for it and say, this is what I need you to do. And so it didn't work, right? And I'm sure people, there were people in those events that were perfect clients for me, perfect clients for Sourced, that didn't sign up. And I'm sure they weren't aware of why, right? That it was, an associate coach is teaching or whatever. But I am certain that they felt the energy of that. And, I believe that I decided somehow deep down internally, just as I decided to heal my hip pain, I decided that I did not want to be the structure for other people anymore. I didn't want to be the structure for other people anymore. I did that because it was a survival mechanism. And it has caused me a lot of pain, right? Physical hip pain, for one, but a lot of pain because I never trusted a person or even a system to hold me. I want to say that again. I never trusted a person or a system to hold me. So I was holding everything. And even with all my leadership development training and, delegation practice, I've always had a team. I've been having them support me for ages. But in my energy field, I felt like I had to be the structure, right? And we could call it an ego identity. I didn't know it. But this sense of feeling safe if I'm holding structure, that started when I was 8 years old. It made sense when I was 8 years old. It really was true that, I didn't have that sense of safety from my mom. And my stepdad, he was learning how to be a dad, and he was young. He was 26, and, here he has whatever, we could give all the reasons. He had a drinking problem. So he wasn't equipped to be the structure. And so it was a smart decision. It made sense. It was like a little bit of wisdom from my little 8-year-old to decide that. But it had long since run its course. And if I look back at my marriage where I was the structure and I was the provider and all of that, like it was really a clue to how I was being, right? And when I say it ran its course, It's like I got into this new relationship where I felt safe and supported and protected, and it allowed me to relax enough to realize I don't want to be that anymore. I don't want to be that anymore. And of course, I was unconscious of that decision. I don't want to be that anymore. And so I was doing my best, given what I knew, to figure out how to not be that anymore. But I didn't really even know what that was. I wasn't aware of it. It was in my unconscious mind. And so, I didn't know how to change it. And I ended up somewhat blowing things up, right? Unintentionally. Now, I'm going to share just a little bit about what has that meant being on the other side of that, because I've really been in integration of this shift from being the structure to using structure. I've put a lot more structures in place already, systems in my programs, in my life, in my calendars and money and all of these things. And I'm a work in progress. And I have doubled down on being, I call it lubricant, being the person that shows up and points in the right direction, get things moving in the right direction, creates that like if there's a dam, right? And someone is stuck up against the dam and they can't get through, I can break that open and get them moving in the right direction. But I don't have to stay around to be their structure. And it's changed everything. It's changed how I view everything. And I'm still figuring out all of what that means. But the more I play that role, the more I'm in my new magic, which is expression magic, which is why I'm recording this solo episode. And the more I actually bring value, right? The more I actually bring value, because I'm so committed to people being sovereign and moving in the right direction, not relying on structures outside of them that that they can't take with them, right? But being sovereign and capable of building structure for themselves that supports them to be in their magic and in their flow. So a lot more tools and systems going to work in my business, a lot less just hoping people will know what to do, and a lot more being clear about what I want them to do. Some of the things that haven't been my strength, I'm now embracing, which, that's what happens when something's in our blind spot. We might dismiss it as not our strength, and really it's just a default energy pattern. Again, I'm still a work in progress. I'm designing all new, refreshed versions of my programs, and it feels really good. And I just can't wait to see what comes. What else do I want to share about the structure and flow? I guess I'll wrap it up like this. So your thing may not be about structure and flow. You may not have that same story about masculine and feminine energy, although I'm guessing you have some story, especially if you are in a female body and you live on this planet. You have some story about structure and flow and who you get to be and who you don't get to be and all of that. Maybe you have a trauma about who was supporting you and whether you got to be in your flow or not. But what I know is when things don't go according to plan, when we don't get the results that we want, it's not the end of the world. There's no need to freak out. I maybe freaked out just a little bit about the changes in my program and system. But it's an invitation to look at the energy pattern that used to serve you that's not serving you anymore. You've outgrown it. You've outgrown it. And it doesn't mean anything bad or wrong about you. The sky is not falling. You've just outgrown it. And get support to understand how you've outgrown it and what you need next. Like, I would not have moved through this so quickly. One, if I didn't teach this stuff, and two, if I didn't have aligned, sourced support in my corner. So if you're resonating with this, if you want support from me, just email support@sourcedexperience.com. Let them know you listen to this episode and you want support from me, and I will know how to help you. I would love to hear if you have a similar experience or what this is bringing up for you. It's a little raw. It's my first time doing this. It's very alive. So please let me know. What do you hear? Who needs to hear this episode? And thanks for being magical.